Alright guys, we are taking a bit of a break from the garden now that we've actually been in the garden, and I'm going to show you a quick video of what you can do with what you actually are growing in the garden. So I've gone ahead and I've already cut the leafy green portions off of the radishes. Now it's pretty simple. You just cut those off. You can actually cut them clean right at the end here, so right there, and cut off the roots as well. And once you've cut those two portions off, if there's any blemishes on them, like this portion here, I don't know if you guys can see that or not, right there, tiny blemishes like that, you can remove them if you want to. They're probably not going to hurt you at all. It's pretty good looking radishes. They're, yeah, you just make sure that you cut off this top portion here. So I don't know if you guys can see that because the lighting isn't the greatest, but this portion right there. So see that? Just make it a clean cut, and then do the same thing with the bottom. Right. So that's all you're going to do with the radishes, and then again, like I said, if there's any blemishes on them, you can kind of see some blemishing there from the root. It's not a big deal. You can remove it if you want. So get these ready, wash them. That's what we're going to do. So I'm going to fast forward obviously to each segment. And this is our zucchini. We're going to do the same thing with it. We are going to wash it first, however. Make sure that everything is off of it, all the dirt, any, bug guts or whatever that might have been on it. There are a few blemishes on it. I'm not too concerned about it. I might cut it off, might just leave it. Again, wash it though, and you're going to be cutting off this end here and this little brown portion at the end on this side. So I'm going to wash all this stuff slowly, step by step, explain everything to you guys, and we are going to end up frying this with the radish and try to make a bit of a tasty side. Not really a salad, but I like to consider it as somewhat of a salad. And we are going to be having this with some leftover cabbage rolls. So this is kind of our opportunity to be creative with what we've created in the garden. And I'm going to tell you guys all the measurements I'm using. It's kind of an experiment with a recipe that I found online that I'm modifying just for my own particular tastes and what I have available to me. Now that we have washed the radishes and the zucchini as well, we can cut it up for however we want to cook it. For the radishes, I'm replacing the onion that was in the recipe with radish. They're not as bad as onions. You're not going to cry while cutting them up or anything, but they are a nice spice. So if you're making something and you add these in, whether they're raw, cooked slightly, if you cook them too much, then they lose all their flavor. These basically, we're just going to dice them up relatively small, and we're going to end up frying them. Now, I'm using a pretty big knife. I'm not a chef at all. I'm just kind of using whatever is available to me. And if anybody thinks that I'm doing something wrong, you're probably right. So they're just little slivers. Obviously what you can do is stack them and cut them again. Now, for me, this is just one of the techniques that I've learned from watching other YouTubers. I did watch probably a couple of years ago. I used to watch a British show. I've still seen some of their videos online. Obviously, they're still around. I can't remember the name of the channel, but I watched them quite a bit, so I do know some stuff about how to cut and cook. So those are the radishes all cut up. So pretty small pieces. If you missed a piece, it's not a big deal. You can kind of cut it up again if you really need to. So that is the radish, both the radishes ready to go. We are going to throw these into the pan. We are going to use some olive oil and some salted butter. Basically just a teaspoon of each. Put it in the frying pan, put it on low. Basically you just want the butter to melt in with the oil, spread it around the base of the pan, and then add the radish. Again, make sure you're cooking this on low, because we are just wanting to fry the radish just a little bit. And you can start this while you're doing the zucchini if you are really good at timing things. If you're not good at timing things, then maybe prep your zucchini first, which I'm going to do just to make sure that I'm not off on my timing. And I'm going to prep this, and then I'm going to show you guys the other stages of this cooking process for this kind of makeshift recipe, and then also show you the other elements that I add for flavor. And I'll tell you guys the time that I generally use. I've made this recipe once before and it wasn't quite to my liking, so this one is kind of my second take on it, and hopefully this one goes a lot better. Alright, so on to the zucchini. So the end, I've cut that off. The brown end, I've cut that off as well. Now we're left with the zucchini. Good portions, I just cut it in half. And here's a tip for when you guys are gardening. The bigger the zucchini, the larger the seeds are going to be. So if you have a zucchini that is, let's say, twice this size, the seeds are actually going to be really big. And if you're careful enough when you're cutting this, the seeds are actually in these little columns here. There's 2 columns. And the zucchini that I actually had last week when I made this recipe the first time, the seeds, if you're careful and you cut this so that you can actually salvage the seeds, those seeds you want to keep and use for your garden next season. This is no different than you going to the grocery store and buying zucchini and cutting out the seeds and saving them for later. Except this time we're using zucchini from our own garden and saving those seeds, which means the generations, they'll grow stronger and stronger, and they will be used to the soil already. That is something that I've actually heard about, is that each generation is generally going to be stronger. That kind of goes with anything. They adjust to the soil, and then I guess somehow the seeds just kind of know every year that they're in the same conditions. And considering zucchini grow really well in my garden, I'm not really concerned about that. But it is a benefit to keep reusing the same seeds. So it doesn't matter how cleanly you cut these things. Now, this in here is going to be really squishy. You guys probably can't tell, but when you go to cut it, so Yeah, you guys can probably see that, really squishy. So basically, lighting is not the greatest, but what you want to do, hopefully you guys can see this angle, basically you just want to shave off where all the seeds are. Now again, if you had a bigger zucchini, you could actually salvage the seeds. You guys can see all those lines. Those are actually seeds that have been cut in half. If you want to save them for next season, pick the zucchini when it's a lot larger. These seeds will be much better to use. These ones that we currently have, I've ruined them because I've cut them in half, and they were also a little bit too small to actually use. And again, I like using a bigger knife. I find I have more control with it rather than a small knife that would literally slice through anything, and it takes no effort at all. So I'd rather not be cut. But that, again, is kind of just my preference. So there's a clean piece. Do that with the remaining pieces. If you're concerned about the size when frying, which I kind of am, cut them down again, even smaller, and from there, just simple as that. Cut them up. You don't really want them any longer than like an inch, basically. And once we get all of these done, all these cleaned up and cut into these sizes, then I'm going to start cooking the radish and go through the next process of the timing and seasoning and when you should add your zucchini and then how long to cook those for, stirring and all that stuff. So I'm going to finish cleaning up these and start the burner and show you guys the rest of the process of the recipe.